Good afternoon, everybody. Tuesday, April 30th. Figured I would do something a little bit different today. Shouldn't say different, but this is the first time I'm also trying to do picture-in-picture because I know that there were some of you that wanted to talk more about photography and how I edit my photos and things like that. So this is going to be a YouTube only podcast slash tutorial slash whatever you want to call it. I won't do the audio version because you really need to actually be watching this to fully understand it. So what I will tell you is that we are starting. I've already imported all of my photos. I have already culled all of my photos. So I've gone through and rated, as you can see on the screen. At least I hope you can. There are little stars right here. 1 star. All of these are going to be horizontal photos. As I've previously discussed, I do a number 1 typically for horizontal photos, number 2 for vertical photos because of the way that I set up my watermarks. I will be doing another tutorial this week in regards to creating watermarks in Photoshop. Try to make your guys' life a little bit easier, especially if you're using Lightroom. So maybe tomorrow I'll do that. We'll do a tutorial on how to create a watermark in Photoshop and then upload it for Lightroom. That is the plan this week. So, but today we're going to go through some of the editing and how I do the editing. So, as I said, I've already imported all of my photos and I've gone through and briefly selected the ones that we are going to edit. Now, there's almost 200 photos here. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all 200 photos with you guys, but I want to go through some of the basics. So let's just get started with this first one here. I'm going to go to my develop area. Wait for this to load. And what I like to do if I'm doing a panning shot of some sort, I like to zoom in. You know, it doesn't have to be. I know some of you are going to be like, well, it's not perfectly tack sharp from edge to edge. Well, you may be right sometimes. Sometimes you're probably not, depending on what medium you're looking at it. But this one is pretty damn close. So on some of this, and given I'm using a MacBook, the commands are usually pretty close to the same as far as a Windows-based machine PC goes. So, first thing I'm going to do after I look to see if I think it's pretty sharp or damn close to, I'm gonna move on with editing that photo. If it's not, I'm just gonna hit the 0 key. It's gonna hop out of my rated photos, which I guess I could go back to and show you guys quick. When I go back to my library tab, some of you may be wondering how it was that I got to this point. Well, after I go through and I hit a 1 or a 2, whatever it may be, in the upper right-hand corner under where you see your library, develop, map, etc., in the far right, there's going to be a drop-down right next to a padlock. And you can flag photos, you know, you could do a bunch of different stuff. You click on the rated photos, and guess what? All the photos that I went through and put a number by are the ones that are going to show up as long as you have this rating right here. Again, towards the upper right by the color schemes. And a rating of greater than or equal to 1. So if you've got... sometimes I do galleries for Bang Shift. My friend Chad over at Bang Shift. I'll send him a gallery depending on the event that they can run on Bang Shift. Well, if I'm doing Bang Shift, I'm sending them different photos than what I put in my own gallery usually. So they might get a number 3 and a number 4. Number 3 being a horizontal and number 4 being a vertical for Bang Shift. So that I can keep those separate from the ones that I'm editing for myself. So let's get into this. We're going to go to the develop key. We've already looked at the photo. It's pretty sharp. It's dark. There's some darkness and some lightness. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this photo because obviously I was panning at a wide angle. I'm going to double check, but I don't know if you guys can see. I'm not sure what you can see with the screen sharing. I wish this thing would go away. I'm aware that I'm sharing a screen. I have it set up so that I can see my exposure and then my toolbars on the right hand side. So I'm going to hit the letter R. Letter R on a Mac. And I'm assuming a PC allows you to crop. Now, when I do this, let's reset that crop and start from the beginning here. In your toolbar, typically on the right hand side, when you go to crop, and I see this mistake made by a lot of photographers, they freeform crop, or do some kind of custom cropping. As far as the aspect ratio goes, I don't do that. I always leave it as original. When you are in the crop area, you're going to see this top toolbox. It's always going to be on original, and the padlock is always going to be locked. So I lock it on the original 2:3 aspect. 2:3 ratio always stays the same. So I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. I'm going to crop in, get rid of some of this dead space, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, he's cropping half the photo out. You might be right. Depends on how wide I shoot the photo. And then I'm going to sit here and play with the box for a second and be like trying to determine where I want my layout, if you will, what I want it to look like. And again, I've talked about this in previous podcasts that when it's the drag racing stuff, I'm pretty minimalistic. When it's car show stuff, I really take artful liberty in regards to what I am doing. I don't know why it's not showing up the toolbar, which is slightly annoying because I wanted to be able to show you guys the toolbar for what I am doing. Let's try something once. I bet you that's not going to help either, is it? No, none of that. It's not sharing it. Okay, well, at least I'm not seeing it, I guess you could say. And I don't think if we add a background, I don't think it's gonna help either. So that really doesn't matter. I'm not sure why it is that it's not showing the entire screen. I apologize for that, but we'll proceed on. You'll get the general idea. So we're looking at this photo and going, well, you know, the car is kind of dark. I did shoot this at 200 ISO, so I know that I've definitely got some room to work. It was shot at 1/200th at 7.1 ISO 200, 27 millimeters on a 24-70 2.8. So I usually take my highlights almost all the way down. 90% of drag racing photos, I take my highlights anywhere between -75 and sometimes even -100. I like to add a little bit more contrast, so that's what I'm going to do. Now we can play with the white on here a little bit because it is a white car, but what I really need to do is I need to bring out the shadows. And as you can see as you're watching this, now all of a sudden you can see the front wheel. Now this was shot with my D3S, so obviously I can't crop in as far as I can with a D850, but it works. So the next thing I'm going to do is pretty much got my subject matter the way I want it, but the sky looks like crap. It's all whited out. So I'm going to go back over to my toolbar here, and right under your histogram, there's going to be a few different options. You've got, you know, your cropping, your icon that looks like a Band-Aid. Then you've got your red eye, but right next to that you've got masking. It's going to be that round circle with the dots round circle. Aren't all circles round? That just made me sound like a dumbass, didn't it? So masking, or Shift W if you're on a Mac. I'm not quite sure what it is on a PC. Maybe it's the same on a PC. Leave a comment. Let me know if most of the commands are the same on a PC. Now, you can add a mask to your subject, to the sky, to the background. There's a bunch of different options. Brushes, things like that. Brushes are really handy, especially for windshields if you're trying to take a little bit of the glare out of a windshield and darken up a windshield a little bit. So we're going to select sky. And I will tell you that Lightroom Classic has gotten a lot better about being able to detect certain things. Now, I didn't want it to auto-populate because it's already on Sky for me, which is a pre-made that I have done and saved to speed up the time in which I am doing things. Because once you get in the flow, you just want to go. I don't spend a ton of time. I take entirely too many photos and I don't have the time to sit here and spend 5 minutes on every single photo. And if you're doing it in a journalistic way, there's no need to anyways. If you're doing creative, artsy freedom, then go right ahead, because I know that sometimes, like, I see power lines here and I see the blurred out sign for the Love's gas station across the street for the interstate. I see that in the background. I don't care. I'm not going to sit here and spend 15 minutes, whatever it may be, trying to get rid of all this crap, move it over to Photoshop and do all that. That's, to me, I don't have the time to do that. What I will tell you is the pre-made mask that I have for the sky. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is negative 0.59 on the exposure. The highlights are taken to negative 79. The temperature is negative 17. And everything else just stays at 0. As far as I don't touch anything else. So all I'm pretty much doing with my pre-made sky, if you will, is adjusting the color, which is actually the temperature of it, the highlights, and the exposures. And I'm going to show you what happens if we can go darker, and that just looks ridiculous. So we can go, like, back up to, let's go to 0.70, and let's warm it up just a little bit here so it looks a little bit more realistic. And you can play with it. I do believe that the dehaze, did I have? I don't remember if I had adjusted. Yep, the dehaze is at 47. I apologize. That is the one other thing. And you can play around with the dehaze with the sky so it looks more realistic. You don't want a fake looking sky. You just want to bring some of it out. And you can play with it. You can play with the blacks and kind of darken it up underneath the clouds and things like that if you really want to. But again, like I said, I need to expedite these things, otherwise it'll take forever. So once I've got the sky the way that I like it, I'm just going to click on that masking icon again, and honestly, this photo is done. What I could normally do then is just hit my arrow key, and the next photo will populate. And again, same deal. I would probably do the same thing with this car. I'm going to open up the shadows. I'm going to play with the sky a little bit just to brighten up the subject and make the sky look not so washed out. Now, here's the thing that I see a lot of, and I see it a lot more with no prep and grudge photography at times, is people that shoot with a 1.4 and a 1.4 lens. So the 105 f1.4 is a really popular lens. The 85 1.4 the problem that I see is some of these photographers are using this in the middle of the day. They're shooting at 1:4, and they're taking artistic freedom with the editing that, in my opinion, makes the photo look hideous. Everything is brown and orange, and they're playing with it. It kind of looks like you drug the photo through a mud puddle and hung it up to dry in the sunlight for a day before you posted it on social media. I will tell you right now that it's not a commercially viable way to do anything. You're not. If all you're looking for is artistic freedom, go right ahead. I could tell you that a lot of us in the industry will scroll right past that crap and not even look at it, because it's hard to look at. It's not in any way natural. It almost looks like you've taken 6 2017 Instagram filters and just stacked them on top of each other. It is hard to look at, and the white balance is all off, and I'm just like, I look at those as I'm scrolling past, and I'm like, no, I just can't. But again, photography is art, and it's very subjective, so you can do it whatever way you want. I'm just showing you guys how I do it, and if you want to make an effort to make your photos commercially viable, and what I mean by that is that people are going to purchase photos, or companies are going to want to contact you for either purchasing usage of a photo for advertising purposes, or they want to hire you to do photos. Most of the time when they see that stuff, I would say 98% of the time, if they see that that is the way that you are creating content, they're going to scroll right on by. They're not going to even bother with it, because it's not for the masses. And artwork isn't necessarily for the masses, but you also have to remember that in the commercial side of things, you have to be much more neutral to appeal to a wide audience, if you will. So, with that said, let's go to the next photo. This one, we don't have to worry as much about the sky. I do really like this photo because there is a slight reflection on the ground, because just the way that the lighting and everything worked. I'm going to crop in a little bit more, and you know what? I'm pretty much going to get rid of the sky, or what was left of the sky altogether. I don't have a problem with that. Some bleachers behind it. Beautiful white G-body. So we're going to, again, add some contrast. But you'll notice, when I added that contrast, that blue got really blue. And I'm going to take a little bit of the highlights out. Since it is a white car, I'll probably slide my whites up to about 30. Let's see what happens when we open up the shadows. And again, this was shot at 200, so I'm not afraid to open up the shadows. That's at 60. And we zoom in, and you can see the reflection on the ground. The wheel is nice and sharp. Everything about this photo it's sharp. It'll work. For what I want it to work for, it'll work. Now, I don't like the white balance on this, though. I can tell you that right now. It doesn't look right. So we're going to play with that. That eyedropper tool, it's going to be like the very top of your sliders in Lightroom Classic in the toolbar over there on the right-hand side. It's going to look like a giant eyedropper. Don't always try to manually adjust your white balance. Click on that eyedropper and find some place to move it. I'm going to put it right on this door and see what happens, because I can already tell there's a blue tint to the photo. Obviously, it's because of the blue sky reflecting off of the track. That's why the wheels also, that's why chrome will have that blue shade to it as well. So let's kind of pick somewhere in this white area where we see a blue tint. And if this is picking up the way that it should on my share screen, you'll see that there is a grid box that pops up when you do this and follows your eyedropper around. If I move it down here onto the pavement, you'll notice it's very dark blue. Don't click on that because that is going to destroy your white balance. I mean, yes, you can always go back to as shot or whatever you want, but you know, like this, there's just a too much of a tinge of blue. I just want to warm it up, and I don't want to do manual sliders to do it. So a lot of the time I will use the eyedropper, and when I find a spot, if I'm not using a car, when I find a spot, I'll keep going back to that spot and adjusting from there as I need be. So let's click on this and see what happens. Okay. It did warm up the photo. I don't particularly like it. I think it warmed it up too much. That went to 6,900 with a plus 19 on the tint. Let's see what it was as shot. As shot, it was 50.05 and 14 on the tint. So I'm going to leave the tint alone, which is your pink and green. And I'm just going to manually move the slider up a little bit. And see if, we come up with, I still don't like that. So when that happens, I'm going to go over to the wall. I'm going to pick my eyedropper again, and I'm going to go over to the concrete barricade wall. And I'm going to click on that and see what happens. 5250 at a plus 22. I like that way more than what the eyedropper was giving me on the door. I did get rid of some of the blue. Not all the blue. I can still see the reflection in the wheels. That's okay. But the car does not look like it's got nearly as much of a blue tint to it. And you can adjust that by, playing with the whites. But then you also run into the issue where you may lose some detail because everything will start to blend together. So that one's, in my mind, I mean, again, some of you will spend entirely too much time on this. And I'm spending about 10 times more time than I would on a normal photo so that I can explain to you guys what I'm doing. That photo I'm done with, though. Oh, let's see. What can we go to next? Should we go to... Let's go to a really harsh daytime photo once. Let's check this one out. I have to check on my cat just a second. Okay, he's just down there chilling. Okay, as you can tell, the lighting at this track is extremely harsh during certain times of the day. Very backlit. So you have to decide, are you going to try to brighten up the car as much as possible? Are you going to deal with the backlight and then try to fix it in post? What are you going to do? The other option is like circular polarizers or ND filters that will bring it down. A stop, 2 stops, 3 stops. I mean, there are ND filters that'll do 10 stops. This was shot at 1/1600th of a second at f1 ISO 320 at 500 millimeters. As you can tell, the back of the person standing in front of the car is pitch black, and that's because of the backlighting. The sunlight is facing him, it's not behind him. So we're going to crop in. And if you can see this, there is a photographer had leaned his camera against the wall right there in the bottom left. So we're going to crop in so that's gone. And then on the left-hand side, there's also a gentleman kind of jogging out towards the side of the car. I want to keep him in it because I think it adds to the photo. Just the generalization with people in the photo, I think it adds to it. Normally, I wouldn't have to crop in like this, but because there was that camera on the bottom left, which is distracting, so I'm going to hit return, and that's what we've got now. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the highlights down. And we'll see how much of it doesn't make that much of a difference. That's negative 89 on the highlights. I should probably take the exposure down a little bit just to get rid of some of the glare. So that is negative 0.50 on exposure. So essentially half a stop of exposure. Now I'm going to play with the shadows. And we're just going to jump straight up on the shadows. Boom! There we go. There we go. And if you look behind the car, I don't know how well you can see this. I'll zoom in. You can see the sun is setting behind the car just based on the coloring on the concrete behind the car. But boom, we opened up those shadows. I haven't even added my contrast yet. Let's see what we can get for some contrast. Nope, don't like that as much. And remember, when you're shooting in RAW, which is all I exclusively shoot in, you're going to have a lot more ability to bring out shadows and do other things with these images because it's not baked in like if you shoot in JPEG form where the camera is essentially editing the photo for you in camera. This is I shoot like a neutral raw image. I don't do a lot of exposure compensation things. I try to get it pretty close in camera so that way when I bring it into Lightroom, I don't have to spend, minutes and minutes and minutes. Because let's think about this. If I've got to edit 200 photos and I'm spending, let's say, 3 minutes on each photo or 4 minutes on each photo. That's, okay, 200 photos, that's 800 minutes. Well, guess what? 800 minutes divided by 60 minutes in an hour, all of a sudden you are spending, let's say 800 minutes divided by 60 minutes in an hour, 13 hours editing? That doesn't seem right. But it probably is. Now, I spend about 20 seconds on each photo. So if I'm getting 5 photos done every minute, 200 divided by 5, it's 40. Realistically, I'll be done with 200 photos in an hour. And again, that just comes down to getting your workflow down and not spending a ridiculous amount of time on each photo depending on what your end goal is. So again, now that I brought the shadows out, you can see the back of the person walking in front of the car. I've now taken my eyedropper out to play around with the white balance. I'm going to warm this up a little bit because it does have a very cold look to it. And, with the sun setting, it just makes sense to warm it up a little bit. We'll see. I picked a spot on the hood. We'll see what it turns out. It's a little bit green for my liking. I do like the warmth on it. The track is a little brown, though, now. So I'll take the pink, the tint, and go up with it, and I will just go down slightly on the temperature and see where we're at. And I have gotten to the point where I can tell if there's too much pink or too much green. I know, coming from the guy who's got pink hair, whoever would have thought there would have been too much pink in the photo. But you can tell at the bottom of the photo, you know what? Let's do this. Let's see what happens. You remember when I talked about that masking feature that we use for the sky? Well, you can also use that for your background. Let's click on that once. Let's mask and let it detect the background. And see what it comes up with. Sometimes it fails epically on even being able to try to find the object. So we'll see. Okay, well, it did a decent job, but I don't want to use sky. So what I'm going to use, I just want to darken it a little bit. We're going to use burn. We're going to go to the drop down menu and we're going to select the burn option. So this way I can just focus on trying to take some highlights and exposure out of the background, not the subject, but the background. I can still see the gentleman on the left of the screen, that he's in motion. I like that look a little bit more. I don't like how brown it is, so maybe we'll go back after dealing with the background and turn the temperature down on it a little bit. And you can also do that when you're in your masking, for masking the background or whatever it may be. Now I've got an image that I don't mind using. I think this is okay. This I can live with. So let's let me pull that one back up quick. I just want to do this. I want to show you guys I'm going to hit the reset button so you guys can see what it looked like to start. That's what it looked like to start. And then I'm going to hit Command Z. And it'll undo my reset, essentially. And this is our end product. Yeah, I can live with that. That works for me. So let's see. Let's do more of a nighttime one here. Here we go. I think this is Tate's car that we're doing. Tate's car out of Chicago area. Yep, it is. We're going to see if that's... there we go. It's taking a little while because I've got multiple things running on the MacBook, so normally it doesn't take that long to actually pull up the image. Not bad. It's sharp, a little noisy. Don't really care about that all that much. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop it. Obviously there's a bunch of fans behind here, so I'm going to crop in pretty good. But I'm going to raise it up like this and give it head space because of all the people around it. That, to me, looks exponentially better. So let's play with this for a second. We're going to add a bunch of contrast. We're going to take the highlights down a little bit more just to help with those zoomy flames. As you can see, it just brought out some more of the color. It wasn't so whitewashed, if you will. And then I'm going to increase the exposure. Let's go a full stop on the exposure and see what happens. That's almost too much. Let's go down to half a stop and see 0.50 and see where we're at with that. That's pretty good, right? I'm really not worried about the bringing out more shadows because at this point you get the general idea. There are people in the background, but we don't need to see the details of the people in the background because that's not what we're concerned about. So let's play with the whites here for a second. That is plus 45 on the whites, and that just made that look absolutely hideous. So we're just not going to do that. We're going to go back to, let's just go back to 0 on the whites, and let's play with our white balance for a second. So let's get our eyedropper and find an area on the hood because this has just got a weird color to it right now. Let's see what we can find up here. And if we don't like it, we can always try something else. I don't mind that. But what I want to do is, let's get a little creative here and take the black slider, darken it up a little bit, find a kind of a happy medium, not too much, not too little, because again, the key is your subject is to focus on the subject. Now, some of you are going to say, well, that's entirely too noisy or grainy. Well, guess what? That's at 1/400th, 6.3, 5000 ISO. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of noise. I don't care. I am not afraid of higher ISO. I'll pull up an image in a minute here that I shot at 10,000 ISO, and I'll still use it. So this to me right now, this to me works. Let's see. Take the clarity and go to 10 with it. Yeah, I think for that image that works. So I don't overthink it. I just use my eyes and go, that works or that doesn't work. Let's see what this one, this next one. So we're done with that one. Let's see what this one was photographed at. Now that was photographed at 6400. Let's go higher. Unless this is the night that oh, this is at 8,000. Let it clean up a little bit as I zoom in, if it's in focus or not. Okay, so we can see there are some detail. You can definitely see some noise. This is actually one that I already edited. This is, I went up a little, just a touch on the exposure, and let me show you what the original photo looked like. See, we did very little on that one. That's the original. That's the edited. Again, you can tell there's been very little done to that. That was just, again, some highlights and some exposure. Trying to find one that was at, 8,000, 10,000. That's another 8. This is another 8,001. And again, some of your camera gear will easily let you do these 8,000, 10,000. But and I don't know how well you can see this, but the top of the windshield here, I can read that no problem. So on this one, obviously we've got some dead space in the bottom left. So we're going to crop in. Honestly, at this point, the other car I don't care about in the other lane because it's half cut off anyways. So I'm going to keep the tree in there on the far right because I also like the green that it gives me on the track. So we're going to crop in there. I'm going to take, nope, can't take the highlights down that far on that one. That'll flatten it out, so we're not going to do that. What I will tell you, though, is if you look above the tree where the lighting is, you can see how much noise that's actually in your shadows. If you take your shadow slider and go, bam, everything is dark, but all that background is gone. Now you have two choices with this. You can brighten it up a little bit with exposure, but I want to show you another trick. Let's take the shadows back to 0 again. Or, I don't know, let's take them to +10 and see what happens. Okay. Car looks good. People behind it. The flames are flaming, if you will. But instead of taking the shadows down to get rid of that noise in the background, what are we going to do? We're going to hit the masking button and we're going to hit background again. We're going to see if it can detect the background on a night shot. And this was shot at 1/200th at f2.8 at 8,000 ISO. So you get the idea. Again, we're going to go to burn, which is your darken. I have a feeling it did not pick up on the car, though. That's the problem. Because if I go and turn this exposure. Yep, it did not pick up the car as the subject matter. So we cannot use that mask. We can't mask the background. Can we mask the sky, though? Will it pick up the sky? It might, because on the right-hand side you can see the trees. So we'll see if... Okay, so it did detect that using the sky. So using the sky masking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken that so that I don't have to take away all of my shadowing. I just want to darken the background a little bit. So let's take a stop and a half of exposure out of there and see what happens. I have a feeling it's not going to go all the way down to the fence line because I can see the top of the fence. Then again, I've been to this track numerous times, so I kind of know where everything is. But I got rid of some of this noise in the upper right-hand corner by using the sky masking and dropping the exposure. I took the exposure down 2 full stops and took the shadows down to like -68. So we're going to click off of that. Again, sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do, but you're still telling a story with it. So don't be overly concerned. Like there, I took the black slider down to -40 and I didn't like it. So we're just going to go back. I am going to try to adjust the white balance on this because it is a tad bit green because of the concrete. So let's... hopefully it doesn't add too much pink. Again, it normally does not take... That is much, much better of a white balance than we had before. And again, I used the eyedropper and I just kind of went over to my bottom left over here in the concrete where I was seeing all the green and everything, and I clicked on there. And if I'm close, then I can manually adjust it from there. This one, I don't even have to do that. That photo's done. Oh, let's see. What else we got here? I'm really hoping that you guys are enjoying this and getting the general idea. Let's take this photo of John. My buddy John 4, who, again, arguably one of the best and greatest door slam drag racing photographers, period, ever, point blank. I'm going to show you, this is one that I've already done, and this got posted in the highlight gallery. We're going to reset it so I can show you what it started as, though. Wow. That, the white balance on that photo is hideous. The wall behind him is green. His skin almost has a green tone to it. It's just not, it's not a flattering photo. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the reset and show you what the final product looks like. Now there is a nice balance to his skin tone, some good light to it. You can tell we've got sharpness. Now this is, again, shot at 8,000 ISO. The only noise reduction that I've done is the luminous noise is at 10 and detail is at 50. Other than that, haven't touched it. Haven't touched the lens correction, nothing. Very rarely do I touch lens correction unless I'm shooting wide angle at like car shows and stuff like that. There's no need to play with the sharpening or anything. The sharpening for me is always at 50. Very rarely do I ever adjust that. Now, I could take some of the noise out of the background if I wanted to, again, use that sky select. So let's reset this for a second. This started out Just the white balance alone started out at 4,500 and a +1. Right? The finished product, obviously, I cropped in and got got everything the way that I wanted it to as far as the composition of the frame. So I took the temperature down to 3950 and the tint up to 38. I added 1.4 stops of exposure, went to 10 on the contrast, -50 on the highlight, -10 on the black, and I think that was it. That's about it. Yep. And that is a much, much better photo. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of noise. This was at 1/200th at 2.8, 8,000 ISO at 70 millimeters on my 70-200. I can see that Nikon perfectly fine on his camera. I can even read his hat that says Forever Grudge. I can, I've got plenty of detail there where I need it. I don't need his thumbnail to be perfectly in focus. You're trying to tell a story, and you're trying to show something that's happening. John is obviously focusing on something at the starting line, and I'm focusing on John. So that makes a huge difference. Now, before we end this, now that we're already 45 minutes in, and I'm hoping that not everybody got bored out of their minds, I'm going to show you a photo in my catalog from Lights Out, I believe it was. We're going to go to the rated, and we're going to go to the rated and see. There's a very specific reason I want to show you this photo. And I don't know how well it's going to show up on a screen share, but we're going to try anyways. And I know it's a nighttime photo, so bear with me here. I just have to find the class. Once I find the class, I already know what car it is. I know what image it is. Not sure why. I had this problem yesterday when I was looking for this specific image too. And most of you have already seen this image if you follow us on social media at all. Okay, so it's up towards the top somewhere. And I have a feeling that my cat is going to be stepping into the screen because he is getting used to me allowing him to be in the office. Yep, he's walking all over everything, and now I have to kick him off the table. Okay, here we go. This image. Okay, guys, this image of white rice at Lights Out. I wanted to show you. This was shot at 1/400th 2.8 ISO 10,000 at 200 millimeters on my 70-200. I want to show you. I did a lot of work on this photo because this photo was used for a very large print, 24 by 36 poster prints that I did for him, and at 10,000 ISO, I know that you guys are worried. So I'm going to reset this and show you what that is what the original copy looked like. The white balance sucks. Everything is blown out as far as, the flame on the car, and it's noisy. There is noise to it. Because it's shot at 10,000. Now, that is the finished product. And, obviously we adjusted the white balance, added some exposure, some contrast, took down the highlights so you got a little bit more detail in the flames, went up with the whites, left the shadows completely alone, took the black down a little bit. But what I wanted to show you guys, there is a part of Lightroom when you scroll down, Lightroom Classic, when you scroll down in your toolbar, there's under noise reduction, there's this denoise. This is an absolute game changer. I shouldn't even be telling you guys about this, but this is a game changer. I shot this at 10,000 ISO. This is what they call the enhanced DNG. This is the after effects, if you will, of me doing all of this. This is the edited photo after I've run it through the noise program. So I want to show you guys something. We're going to crop way in just so I can show you. That GSC still looks good. The 240 on the windshield. Look around this photo. Look at the ground. Look all around this photo and you don't see noise. It's not noisy. If I showed you this image, there is absolutely no way that you would be able to know that I photographed this at 10,000 ISO. You just wouldn't. I'm just going back, so I'm giving the other file a chance to reset because I don't know what it's doing here. Oops. Oh, it moved it moved my crop box. I mean, that's okay. Or however big I want to go. I don't even know which camera body I shot this with. I'm assuming it was the D3S. So I printed this photo. Again, 10,000 ISO. Cropped in. Well, there. You can see how much it was cropped in. A whole bunch of the frame is gone. I used that denoise in Lightroom Classic. Printed these on 24 by 36 and 12 by 18, I think it was. I think you got 12 by 18 prints and 24 by 36 prints. They turned out amazing. Absolutely amazing. So don't freak out when there's a little bit of noise in your photo. One, it's not a bad thing. Two, with technology nowadays, and I tell you guys, try to get it right in camera. Like, do the best that you can, but sometimes you're limited based on the situation and the gear that you have. And that's where something like denoise, and a lot of people have said, well, you know, there's topaz and da-da-da. Well, that's great, but I don't have to do anything besides click a button in the program that I'm already using, which I absolutely love. Hit denoise, it'll bring up a preview screen, and you will be shocked. The first time that you have captured an image in high ISO, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, 800, whatever it may be, and you hit that denoise, and it populates that preview screen, and you cannot believe what you're seeing. Like, how is this even happening? I will tell you, absolute game changer in regards to that. Obviously, you typically want to shoot as low ISO as you can, but we all know, as far as the motorsports community, you don't always get the best lighting, especially at racetracks. Every racetrack's going to be different. Use the denoise to your advantage. You don't have to use it on every photo, but if you're going to print a large image, like, don't sit here and waste hours using denoise on every single thing that you do, because you won't be able to tell a shit's bit of difference when you post it on social media. So with that in mind, let's go to the export. Like, okay, let's just say this is lights out. I think it was like 836 photos, 839 photos, whatever. It was actually 838. There's just duplicate of the white rice because it's got the DNG and the raw image. Excuse me. Don't know why I'm tired today. I even ate lunch. So I'm back in my library. Everything is edited, right? And let's say these are all horizontal photos, so they're going to just all be grouped together. I think on Windows and PCs, it's Control A to select all, Command A for Mac, and then I want to export. So I think it's Control Shift E in Windows. On a Mac, it's Command Shift E. Then my export window is going to show up. This is what I talked about previously. I don't want to export to my desktop because I don't want 838 high resolution photos on my desktop. I'm going to choose same folder as original folder. But here's the key. Do not miss this step. Click put in subfolder. And then name your subfolder whatever you want to name it. Like typically I name mine E3 edits or sponsor edits, whatever it may be, because I'm going to have multiple folders as part of my business. But you would just rename this, edited images or whatever you want to name it. Doesn't matter. Now here's where you can rename them if you want. I don't typically rename them when I'm exporting. I take an extra step and go into the folder when I'm done and rename them in the folder. You can rename them if you want to do a sequence, names, whatever you want. You can look through the drop down. You can rename them. Video, obviously, we're not doing. File settings, I'll show you guys JPEG at 100%. Color space is the sRGB. And then I go down to image sizing. This is just the way that I do it. You guys can size your damn images any way you want. I'm just saying this is the way that I've done it for the better part of 15 plus years. Resize to fit. Megapixels. 2. I always just use 2. And then I leave a resolution of 300. So I'm weird like that. I don't do like 72 DPI. I just leave it at 300. When I'm going to print something, that's completely different. If I'm going to print something, I will resize to the long edge of the image. And typically you're not batch processing. You're just doing a single photo. But I would do the long edge, and then I do 10,000 on the long edge at 300. They are extremely big files, but I don't care because I want as much information as possible on those files when I'm printing. Output sharpening, I never touch. Metadata, all of my metadata is included. And then here's your watermarking. And I'll show you guys. I have a ton of different watermarks that I can use just because Lightroom makes it so much of a pain in the butt to actually edit watermarks, or I should say delete previous watermarks. It's entirely too much of a priority. I mean, I've still got PDRA stuff in here from a couple of years ago. So you can choose your watermark, and this is where you can also, if you want, you can edit your watermarks. But again, that'll be a whole nother podcast where I go into, dealing with watermarks and things like that. Post-processing, do nothing. I do absolutely nothing. And then I hit export, and I just wait for it to populate all my files. You'll typically get a status bar in the upper left. And, I mean, the faster your edit machine and the faster your read-write speeds are on your hard drive that you're using, the quicker that this process is going to be done. Again, that's why I recommend only using SSD hard drives. Invest money. Again, I use NVMe M.2 hard drives and cases. They're small, they're compact, easy to use, and the read-write speed is way better than the preloaded, if you will, SanDisk SSDs and other SSDs that you can buy, and honestly, most of the time it's cheaper too. And then when that hard drive fills up, you can just pop that one out, buy a new hard drive, pop it into that particular case, shell, whatever you want to call it, and you're good to go again. Now, I'm going to exit out of Lightroom. I'll come back, obviously, later because I've got some actual work to do on my Alabama event that we were previously editing. So I will exit out of that. It'll ask me, do I want to back up my catalog? Honestly, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to be 100% transparent with you. I think in the more than, well, shit. Yeah, in the more than 15 years that I've been doing this, I think I've probably hit that backup button like 3 times the entire 15 years. I just never, I don't do it. I don't know why. Maybe I think it's just a waste of time. I just always hit skip. And then I wait for Lightroom to close. And on a Mac, you can always tell because there's like a little, almost like an active button underneath it if it's in your, if it's in the tray or the dock, whatever you want to call it. This time it appears that, probably because I was still sharing it. So we've closed that out, and now we're just back to me. And now Lightroom finally quit. Again, that's probably also because I'm recording this podcast. So, and then I will go into my Finder on a Mac, and I will eject the hard drive. Because on a Mac, you should always eject the hard drive so that you don't run into issues with it hanging up when it's plugged in and not plugged in and not recognizing. And a lot of the times you have to, if you don't do it the right way, if you don't eject it, it will be a pain in the ass. Except for memory cards. Memory cards, I've never had an issue with that, but hard drives I definitely have. So we'll eject that, and when I go to eject that, this is one of the other reasons that I know that Lightroom actually closed. Because if I were to try to eject that hard drive and Lightroom was still running, it would not allow me to eject that hard drive. Now, you can pull it out, but then you can run into a whole host of issues as far as your Mac reading the hard drive, because it may still be like in this stuck mode in Mac. And then you've got to reset your Lightroom and go through an integrity check on Lightroom. Just make sure to eject the hard drive. It makes life a lot easier. So, with that, we're a little bit over an hour now. I want to thank anybody who is still tuned into this. We're going to end today. Again, a big thank you and a big shout out to Menser Motorsports and Classic Graphics. Obviously, Menser Motorsports, prime best shock struts in the industry. If you've got a project and you need shocks and struts, contact Mark and the entire crew over at Menser Motorsports over in North Carolina. They'll do everything they can to get you taken care of. Classic Graphics. We all need apparel. We've all got to wear clothes. And if you've got your own photography business, you should probably be showing it off. You should probably be branding that with your own apparel line, if you will. Not necessarily stuff that you have to sell, but make sure that people know who you are, who you work for, and what you're doing. So make sure to brand yourself so that people aren't always having to ask, well, who are you with? What are you doing? Yada, yada, yada. When you need stuff like that, Scott Bathurst over at Classic Graphics is the one that you should be calling. If you are not, you're missing out. Scott and his crew over at Classic Graphics are amazing people, amazing products, great prices, awesome turnaround time. So, With that all wrapped up, I appreciate you guys tuning in for the last hour. I hope you learned something. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. If you liked the content, I would really love it if you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, just so other people can see it too, because it will help with that. If you didn't like it, I apologize. Again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I am who I am. Some people love me, some people hate me, some people are indifferent. Doesn't matter to me either way. But as long as you learned something today, I feel like this wasn't a complete waste of time. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk next time.